festivals, and sometimes we'll find ourselves on a bill headlining over all these very hardcore metal bands.
Yet they've rocked stadiums, breathed fire, and defined the meaning of showmanship. But even the mighty Kiss had their limits. Over the decades, this legendary band shared the stage with some of rock's biggest names, but there were a few artists they flat out refused to tour with. Not because of rivalry alone, but because of deep creative clashes, personal insults, and sometimes pure chaos. So, let's crank up the volume and dive into 8 bands Kiss refused to tour with, and the surprising reasons why. I'm your host, and you're watching Rock Fame Diaries. Let's begin. Number 8. The Chaos Within. Kiss vs. Kiss. Before we even talk about other artists, let's talk about the band themselves. Yes, believe it or not, the number 1 band Kiss refused to tour with was Kiss. From the outside, they looked unstoppable: Paul Stanley, Gene Simmons, Ace Frehley, and Peter Criss. The perfect rock machine. But inside, it was like living in a powder keg. By 1980, Peter Criss, the original Catman, was out. His substance issues and unpredictable behavior were sinking live shows. Then came Ace Frehley, frustrated and wanting to go solo. One by one, new faces replaced the old guard. And while Gene and Paul pushed Kiss forward with precision and business smarts, the magic, that raw, dangerous chemistry, began to fade. Years later, as Kiss planned their final tour, fans begged for a reunion of the original 4. Gene and Paul offered Ace and Peter a limited appearance, maybe 1 or 2 songs. But money, and pride, got in the way. Ace said, "Send me a formal offer with a check, and I'll be there." Gene and Paul didn't budge. At that point, the band that once ruled together refused to share the same stage one last time. The irony? Kiss' biggest conflict was never another band. It was themselves. Number 7. Metallica. The tour that never happened. Now, let's talk about a dream lineup that could have been historic. Imagine this. Metallica and Kiss, 2 of the loudest, most theatrical bands in rock history, headlining one explosive world tour. It was teased, rumored, and even discussed seriously in the early 2000s. But it never happened, not because of hate, but because of timing. When Kiss was on the road, Metallica was in the studio. When Metallica finally toured, Kiss was off doing a farewell run or side projects. Their schedules never synced. 2 giants forever missing each other in the night. Yet there was no bad blood. Lars Ulrich once called Kiss pioneers of rock branding, while Gene Simmons praised Metallica for keeping metal alive for a new generation. It wasn't ego. It wasn't rivalry. It was simply fate saying, "Not this time." Number 6. Guns N' Roses. The Circus vs. the Rebels. If Metallica was a missed opportunity, Guns N' Roses was a missed friendship. Axl Rose once admitted he grew up liking Kiss, until he didn't. In interviews, he slammed the band's image, calling them a circus act that forgot about the music. To Axl and the GNR crew, Kiss represented everything they hated: makeup, fire, and raucous theater. They were about sweat, danger, and real street attitude. Gene Simmons, never one to stay silent, fired back. He called Axl brilliant but self-destructive, predicting GNR would implode. And guess what? He was right. When Axl mocked their stage costumes again, Paul Stanley took it personally. After all, that image was his life's work. From then on, a tour between Kiss and Guns N' Roses was off the table. Years later, when GNR fell apart, Gene couldn't resist saying, they had everything and threw it away. Number 5. Aerosmith. The tour that broke apart. Now here's a story of a dream come true, that turned into a nightmare. In 2003, Aerosmith and Kiss announced a co-headlining tour called the World Domination Tour. 2 rock titans, decades of hits, Detroit Rock City, Dream On, Sweet Emotion, all in one night. Fans went insane. But behind the scenes, tensions were brewing. Aerosmith insisted on closing every show, refusing to alternate with Kiss. To them, they were the real musicians, But when Kiss performed first with pyros, blood-spitting, and flying Paul Stanley, fans started leaving before Aerosmith even played. It didn't take long for Steven Tyler's camp to get annoyed. They saw Kiss' spectacle as too much theater, while Kiss saw Aerosmith as too serious. By the end, the chemistry was gone. What started as world domination ended as silent rivalry. Both bands finished the tour, but they never shared a bill again. Number 4. Carlos Santana. Music for the soul versus music for the show. Carlos Santana and Kiss were both revolutionaries, just in completely different ways. Santana's guitar sang with spirit, peace, and Latin soul. Kiss' guitars screamed fire, rebellion, and spectacle. Their worlds were never meant to collide, until interviews stirred the storm. In 2005, Santana said Gene Simmons was not a musician, but an entertainer, accusing Kiss of making Las Vegas music. Gene tried to brush it off, saying, "Not everyone likes the same meal." But a few years later, he clapped back, calling Santana boring, and saying he should get off the stage if he can't rock. Promoters once tried to unite them for a tour. But behind the scenes, Gene refused. He didn't want to share the stage with someone who'd called him fake. And Santana, he wasn't about to play next to pyrotechnics and fire breathing. The peace guitarist and the fire demon were never meant to tour together. Number 3. Nirvana. The clash of ideals. When Nirvana exploded in the early 90s, they didn't just change music, they burned the rulebook. Kurt Cobain hated fame. He mocked the rock circus, the overproduction, and the commercialization that Kiss embraced. To him, Kiss was the exact opposite of what rock should be. Yet, surprisingly, Gene Simmons admired Nirvana. He even wanted them on a Kiss tribute album once. But after learning how deeply Kurt resented the Fame machine, Gene realized a tour would never work. Nirvana stripped rock to its bare bones. Kiss built an empire of makeup and fire. Two worlds, two philosophies, both authentic in their own way, but destined never to meet. And when Kurt died in 1994, that door closed forever. Number 2. Bob Dylan. The poet versus the showman. This one might surprise you. Bob Dylan and Kiss. Dylan was the poet of a generation, the man who changed music with words, not pyrotechnics. Kiss were the ultimate rock spectacle. It sounds like oil and water, and it was. But here's the twist. Dylan actually wrote a song with Gene Simmons. Yes, the man behind Blowin' in the Wind co-wrote Waiting for the Morning Light with the demon himself. Still, Dylan could never fully embrace the Kiss image. He stayed grounded in his roots, faith, and message, while Kiss soared into theatrical extremes. A tour together? Impossible. Their musical philosophies simply lived on different planets. Number 1. Motley Crue. Brothers turned rivals. Finally, we reach the one band that came closest to being Kiss' younger brothers, but ended up being their bitter rivals, Motley Crue. Back in 1983, Motley Crue opened for Kiss during the Creatures of the Night tour. It was a huge opportunity. Kiss helped them get exposure when they were just Sunset Strip newcomers. But decades later, things soured. When Gene Simmons made harsh comments about addiction and depression, Nikki Sixx fired back, saying, "So 15 million depressed people should just kill themselves. I like Gene, but I don't like his words." Then came the breaking point. When Kiss used stage platforms that looked strikingly similar to Motley Crue's farewell tour setup, Nikki accused Gene of copying their design. The respect was gone. By the time Kiss launched their end of the road tour, there was no chance of a reunion or collaboration. Old friends had become permanent rivals. So there you have it, 8 bands that Kiss refused to tour with, for reasons ranging from ego, timing, and philosophy, to plain old drama. In the end, it's not about who was right or wrong. It's about how each band defined rock in their own way. Kiss built a spectacle that became larger than life. Others rejected that idea, choosing rawness, rebellion, or authenticity. And that's what makes rock so powerful. the diversity of passion behind it. Which of these stories surprised you the most? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into rock history, hit that like, subscribe, and join the community here on Rock Fame Diaries, where the legends live on.